Hi guys, happy Sunday. It is Clarice, and this Sunday we are doing something different from our norm where I am going to actually be spending time interacting with you guys via chat. Actually, since no one's here yet, I'm just gonna give it some time for people to get on before I commence with my chit chat. And in the meantime, I'm just going to pull up what I had posted on Instagram and just do a quick check with stuff. All right, fabulous. So we have people trickling in right now. I have 3 people here. Hi guys, 5. Hello. I'm just gonna pull up my post that was on Instagram that I posted earlier this week asking you guys if you had any certain questions that you would like to have addressed via live chat regarding watercolor. And I got an amazing response from quite a few of you. And so this Sunday we're kind of going to focus on some of the burning questions that I repeatedly get time and again for almost all the videos that I put out. I'm just pulling up the post really quickly to see what the common ones were. But feel free, guys, to just interact within the via the comments and just let me know if there was anything pressing. I think the top 3 that I've been hearing is number 1, how to mix watercolor with water and get that right consistency. And I think I said it really depends on what you're trying to achieve within your watercolor. So, oh, hey Gatsby and hey Chloe girl. Nice to see you guys here. So that was 1, the mixing of water to color ratio. Second one was someone requested doing basic shapes or practicing basic shapes to kind of get florals. And I believe a third was, give me a second to look at the comments again. It's kind of hard trying to get the comments on well, I'm looking at it from like my desktop. Yeah, so I think shapes was one, watercolor and the water mixture was another, mixing colors to get colors was another question, and then yeah, I think those were the 3 main ones. So if any one of you have additional questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and I can address them during this session that we have. For those of you who missed it last Sunday, this is what we did for Mother's Day. It was using the fluid, the masking fluid, and creating this loosey-goosey colorful visual. Also, before I get started, just wanted to let you guys know, 2 weeks ago or a week ago when I posted this guy up, I know quite a few asked for the trace, so you could trace it out and then paint it yourself. And so that has finally been updated. I finally had the time to update that and upload it, so you can head on back to this tutorial on the channel and you can find the download link for this guy. So enjoy there. And now finally, I'm just gonna get my sheet and then we can get started. And again, guys, I'm doing this session mainly so I can hear from you guys. So please feel free to post your comments or your questions in the chat box area, which should appear to your right, I think. if you're on your desktop. So, oh, Beverly says hi. Hi, Beverly. All right, great. So, first things first, as you all know, I use the Canson watercolor paper, which I find is fairly inexpensive and great for everyday painting, especially for all your testings and trials and just for fun. If you're obviously doing it as a gift or for a project or even your commission to do it, obviously you would use something a little nicer like Arches or the more expensive varieties that are available out there. Hi Margaret, welcome from LA. And for brushes, because we're just kind of testing around today and doing basic stuff, we don't really need to have a whole lot of fancy brushes available, but I'm just going to use the number 8 in the Princeton Neptune. And what else? I might use some of the other silver black velvets that I have in case I just need it for mixing purposes or what have you. So I'll just have these two. And then for colors, I pretty much have my whole set of the St. Petersburg, so I can just dip right out from here. And again, we're not doing anything very specific here. It's just basic watercolor stuff, mixing and whatnot. So we don't have to have too many things on point here. Hi, Virginia. Hi, Martina. Hi, Rosalia. Welcome, guys. So, like I was saying, since you guys are just, yes, Chloe, this is the St. Petersburg White Nights that I have. As I was mentioning, if you've just joined me, this Sunday's session is going to be on just doing basic watercolor, addressing basic watercolor questions you guys had. I posted something on my Instagram previous this week asking if people had any questions and would like to have them addressed verbally, or not verbally, but like live one-on-one through one of these sessions. And I've gotten a great response. So I'm just going to address some of them. And if you guys have any more questions, please, please, please just put them in the chat section and I am more than happy to interact with you guys. Hence the whole interactive session here. Okay, so I think the first thing the most common question I get a lot is about mixing your colors and having the proper ratio between water and the color you're using. So I'm just going to get, I'm just going to make sure that I have my little cup of water right here so you can see the mixture, and then I'm just going to move my sheet off to the side so you can see that as well. And I'm just going to take one of the colors from the St. Petersburg and bring it out here to the front so you can see me mixing it straight from the pan. And I'll take the light green that I have. Let's do that, why not? And I am going to also bring my fairly large palette that I have, that I can show you how the mixing takes place. You know what? Instead of using this, because there's a lot of color on here, I had to pause to think about that. I'm going to use this guy, my favorite shell. And I will mix the color directly on here so it's clean and you guys can actually see it happening live. So first things first, if you're looking to achieve like a darker look in your painting, for instance, let me just pull up a sheet of one of my paintings to kind of show you what I mean, and then we can go from there. Let's pick for these live sessions. This was, I think, like 6 weeks ago now, or unless this is the 7th week. I wasn't counting, I can't remember. But A lot of this was actually very much straight from the pan, mixing it in, or even from the pan directly onto the paper. So I didn't have a lot of water besides what was on my brush when I dipped it in my little water pot here. So to get this kind of effect, which is pretty much not very flowy, but it's pretty dark, I'm just dipping my brush into the water that I have set up, and I'm going to get some of the color off my green. I'm just getting a good amount onto my brush with the amount of water that it has, and once that's done, I'm just mixing it on here. And you see it's quite a bright green. And when I lay it on just directly as is right now, this is the color I will get, or the consistency. So I'm just gonna lay it on here, and that's the consistency I get. And you can swish the color around, and it's fairly dark, right? Now, if I wanted to achieve something where the color kind of trails off and isn't a hard edge, what I normally do is I'll just take another brush and just using water, I'm just gonna touch the area with water and make sure it touches the color so it brings it down, and then it gives it that cloudy effect. And that's exactly what happened over here. So you see how it's all blendy and cloudy? It's because I laid on the color first, like I did with the green here, and then I went in with a brush just with water, and I kind of dragged the color down by just touching the edge. Now this edge kind of dried up really quickly, but watch if I add color here, and there's water already down, so it kind of brings it, it pulls it down. If that makes any sense. So this is how you kind of achieve that effect. And I think one of the best exercises you can do to kind of test this out is if you just take your brush and you just do one line of color after you dip it directly from there, and just swish the color around properly so you can get that nice effect. And just go in with the other brush with just water and just pull it down. And you'll see exactly how it flows, and have fun with it, because you're experimenting to see how much water and how much color you need to kind of get certain looks and effects. And then if you want to add another color onto this just to kind of mix the two and have a gradient happening, I'm just going to use a completely new brush for this so I can use this. So I'm just getting some of the orange that I already had pre-mixed onto my sheet, and I'm just going to have this orange, I'm just going to add it down here. And do you see how that flare of color just automatically happens because you have the water? That's the beauty of watercolor. When the water touches the color, and the water's already on the sheet, it just spreads and it flares up, and you can get all these amazing effects. So it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want a hard edge like this, or if you want a soft edge like this, and then you kind of go in with the color, or if you want to mix it up, you want to mix it up some more, you have to work a little bit more and extend the color up. Now these colors don't quite mix to form something beautiful, like it's just not a pretty mixture, so you're not going to get something super nice if you mix the two. But say if we did like a red and a blue, you'd probably get a really nice purple in between. Actually, let's try the red and the blue, because I have had some people ask me about mixing colors. So I think this exercise, having a red on the top and the blue at the bottom, would be a good enough exercise to kind of see how you can control the color of purple that you get. And to be very honest, I think 2 or 3 people have mentioned that purple has been their most problematic color to get. So and it's also quite a very popular color, like everyone really loves purple, right? So let me just get the red and the blue that I have, and we can start that. But in the meantime, while I'm getting the red and the blue, is this making sense? Can you guys just send me a quick notification in the chat and just let me know if you have any questions? Does this make sense or not? And this way I have an idea of what's happening. So I've taken, I believe this blue is, this is an indigo, and this is the English red, right? This is the English red. Yes, this is the English red from the St. Petersburg White Knights. Thanks, Margaret. Hi, Deborah, welcome. Okay, awesome. So Margaret says this is spot on. This is making sense. Perfect. So I'm gonna use the red at the top, and then I'm gonna use the blue at the bottom, and we'll try and see what kind of purple we kind of get in between. So using my Neptune, I'm just gonna get some red. Move that brush off to the side. I'm gonna get some red. Just mix it on here, just so you can have that visual. Get some water in there as well. Kind of stretch the red. And then I'm just going to lay it on at the top. And if you want to dip some to make it darker, just straight from the pot and add it at the very top, so it's a nice gradient, like from dark to light. And then I'm just going to go in with the other one, the other brush I have, get my indigo blue that I have, and add that at the bottom. And I'll make sure it's nice and dark over there. And in between, we're going to add the water and see how it flows. Got to do it quickly though, because you got to make sure that it doesn't dry up. Now the red, because I started off with the red, it went down super quick. You saw how quickly that spread out. Had I started from the bottom, it probably would have flared up just as much. But try and mix that up. And you don't get quite much of that purple as yet. It's a very light mauve because we're using just the water to mix the colors from the top and the bottom. We're not adding any extra. If we added extra color, we probably get a darker purple. But you do get that gradient, and you do get that pattern. I think some people call it like a cauliflower pattern that the watercolors make. But again, it really depends on how much water you put. So clearly when I went back in with that second dab of water on here, it kind of flared down even more. And so this is where adjusting or making sure that you know exactly how much water you're adding helps. So if I went with this and I just went down to the bottom and created one line, and all I've done is just dipped my brush, wiped off some water, and then I just touch the bottom this way. Do you see how it gives you that nice flare? And it's very organic. Like, you can't control how this flows. It's just going with the flow of the water. So this is how you can achieve that kind of nice, dreamy, blendy look. If you're doing an abstract painting, if you're doing florals even, it really depends on the direction. I'm just using basic shapes here to kind of show you how you can mix and get some of the colors and how you can control the consistency of the color. So just to show you how you can mix colors on your palette, I'm just going to do a quick demonstration on that. And then you guys can let me know if that makes sense. So I'm going to use the red that I have on here, and I'm going to get some of the blue. So I have a little bit of red here, and I'm just going to dip in and get some of the blue, mix that in here, and you'll see the purple that I get. So using the same brush, so I already have red on here, I'm just getting some of the blue, mixing it with the red, and I get this like deep purple. Now, I'm just gonna lay this purple down, and then I'm gonna go back, dip, get some red, add it to this purple, and you'll see the difference. So the reds are the hot, the warm colors. The blues are the cool colors. So it really depends on if you have more cool or more red, or more warm. That dictates the kind of purple that you can get. So this is the purple I got by just mixing it on the sheet. And what you've just seen, let's do it here. So that's the purple. It's nice. It's like a nice dark purple. It's probably because the indigo is quite prominent in there. But now I'm just going to go in and get some of the red, mix it in. And oh wow, I'm getting a little bit of like a wine color. So this is what I get now. And this is simply because I have more red. So this is more of a cooler purple. This is more of a warmer purple because it has more red. That's more of a, I guess, a regular purple. Now I'm going to add more of the blue, and you'll see how, again, it changes the kind of purple you can get. And so now this purple is almost like, it's almost like the first one, but just with more blue. So they're all purples, but just different variations. And it really depends on how much blue and how much red you have in it. So you can actually dictate that by just making sure you mix it on your palette previously, or if you just want to be a total badass and just go straight away on your sheet, absolutely. I kind of like doing that just because A, I don't have the patience to mix. B, I feel it's way more natural when you kind of just wing it, unless you're really looking for something specific. And I just like to do this to see the color kind of flow down. It's just so satisfying to watch. I don't know how many of you agree with me, but it almost comes naturally to me. Like, I want to see this. I want to see this flowing. It's almost like the paints are crying, but they're like forming something so beautiful on the sheet of paper. It's kind of mesmerizing and therapeutic at the same time. Okay, so that's what I have for mixing colors. For what was the other question people had? Okay, making shapes. So here's what I can suggest you guys can do when doing, I guess, when you want to practice just to make basic shapes. When I do my tutorials, I normally explain them in such a way, hoping that, hey guys, here's what you can do to kind of create this shape, and look, you can create these shapes and it forms a flower, or it forms a leaf. So that's usually my intention behind creating fun tutorials that way, just so you can get the basics in, but you're also creating a pretty picture. But here's me breaking it down for you without the pretty picture, and just kind of being very basic, like this is how you do it. So I'm going to use my number 8 again, and I will just use, I'll mix some of the red with the purple because I'm partial to the warmer red, and I will show you what we can get from shapes. So I think the first shape, the most common move or shape that I create with my use with my paintings and tutorials are the comma or the C-shaped ones, and those are very, very basic. But the basic ones for roses that I do, in the center we start off with using just the tip of your brush. So we're not pressing down the whole brush, we're just using the tip. So when we're using just the tip, you're literally just making sure that your prominent color is there and it's the darkest, and you're just doing commas. And then it's just like a flick of the wrist, right? And then as you get to the outer petals, your comma strokes kind of change. So I'm just using this brush and it just has water on it. And for this one, I'm not just using the tip, I'm actually going sideways and I'm kind of pressing down and drag and kind of trailing off. So this is what I'm doing. I'm hitting a spot with the color with the tip of my brush and just kind of doing this. Same thing up here. And I'm literally pressing my brush down this way to create that shape. And that's what kind of navigates the color and the water and kind of makes the color move around. And then I can always go back in with this one and I just kind of do my, using the tip, just creating more of those shapes to kind of form a rose. Right, so that's the difference between using just the tip of your brush and achieving that effect, or just using the whole brush bottom and kind of just brushing the color in the direction that you want it to go in. And those are the basic strokes. So, I mean, if you want to try these as an exercise without creating flowers, for me, I always feel like if you're going to practice, why not just create something beautiful? But if you kind of work in a fashion where I would rather just do this without creating something, I just want to get the hang of it, then I would suggest here's what you would do. Beverly, I see your question. I'm going to answer your question just as soon as I do this. So I'm just going to take my number 4, because literally you just need to get the hang of holding the brush first and foremost. Remember, like when you were younger and learning how to write, there were different ways that you would kind of hold the brush. Sometimes it's like at the very edge, it gives you most control. Some people were a little bit higher. It's like, I think some people even did it this way at one point. You're figuring out a style, right? So it's the same thing when you're painting. So I normally like to hold it this way, and you gotta let your hand be loose. So just trust the process, and using the tip, just kind of go ahead and do your strokes. And you can even, if you like want to feel the difference between just the top and actually pressing it down, just alternate between the two and get that feel of how it feels to do a quick swish or really hold it down and drag. How much control do you have? It all depends on how you feel and what works for you. What works for me might not necessarily work for you. But here's a couple of tips that I can share with you and say, you should try these and figure out how it'll give you the results that you're kind of looking for, right? So that's that. So let me see the question Beverly had. Beverly was asking, what is the best brush for outer rose peels? Yes, okay. So this is also something I, halfway through this chit chat, I was thinking I'm going to show you the difference between using your number 8, like regular round brush, and using the Squirrel Mop. I am very partial to using the Squirrel Mop, especially for roses and really pretty blooms, like bigger blooms like peonies and stuff like that. And you'll see the difference. So let me show you. So for instance, again, let's just do another rose. I'm just going to use this one, the number 8, to do the center of the rose and then create the outer petals. So just getting some of the red. And in fact, I'll even show you how it looks with the silver black velvet. It's very similar to this one because they're, yeah. So you do the center. And the center, you're just using your tip, like I said, and you're doing your C strokes. And let's just use some of the color that we already have on here. Actually, no, I'll use the same one because I want to show you how both of them work. So I'm going to use the same brush here. I'll just take a little bit of water mix some color on here with it because I want it to be lighter than the center. And now I'm going to create my outer strokes. And so I'm just holding it down, pressing it out. And if you're more comfortable turning the page as you do it, absolutely do it. But this is how it looks with the regular round 8 brush. It's going to take some extra color so you can see it darker. Okay, so it gives you like that harder edge feel to it, right? Like the shapes are quite sharp. Like you could actually outline the shapes forming the whole rows. Now using the Squirrel Mop brush, let's just do the same thing. I'm going to create the whole thing using the Squirrel Mop brush. You have to be, it's imperative that you know exactly how much water this brush is capable of holding, because first few times you use it, like there's a lot of water on this. So if I were to use this brush as is and create the center, I'd probably get a blob of red, which would not really work out very well because then it would just kind of seep into one another and then wouldn't give me that crazy nice effect, which is why I always like to use a smaller brush for the center and then use a bigger brush like this one or the number 8 to create the outer petals. So let's just, for the sake of this exercise, let's just use this brush. And what helps, let's use this brush to create the whole flower. That's what I wanted to say. What helps is having your paper towel handy, so you can just kind of, say you dip your brush in the water, you can just kind of dab it very lightly on the sides and it absorbs a lot of water. So say you didn't want it, you had color at the tip, but you don't want to put it back in your little water pot, you can just kind of take the edges off slightly here. Okay, so getting some of the red, and let's do it here. Just want to make sure the tip is nice and straight. So I hold it straight up this way when I do the centers. And you see how the centers are a lot thicker because this brush is very, very thick and has quite a bit of reach. So it really depends on how you lay it down. Now I'm just going to dip the tip of this in the water, and then I'm going to create my dragging C or comma strokes, and you'll see the difference. So this way now I'm just dragging it down and swishing it. That wasn't a great swish. So you see how much water like is there? All that excess water is kind of just going off to the side. I'm going to dab that in a bit. That's one way to take it off if you feel like it's too much. But the shapes, the organic shape that you get by just using the Squirrel Mop brush, to me is way nicer than using this brush here. So, but also notice how much reach it has. Like if I press this brush down, like that's how much coverage I am getting. So it's good to kind of really practice with this brush if you have it and it is your all-time favorite, to kind of maneuver and know exactly how much you need to press down, how much you need to just kind of flick. Again, it also depends on the flower you're painting, or I guess your subject matter that you're painting, right? So good things to keep in mind. Did I answer your question, Beverly? Was that good enough? Let me know, please. Margaret's asking what size brush is the one you use the most for flowers. So Margaret, my favorites for flowers are the number 1 Squirrel Mop brush and the number 8 Princeton Neptune, and then I always have the Silver Black Velvet in 4 and 8, which is off to the side. And oh yes, I did say I was going to show you how the Squirrel Mop brush compares. So Squirrel Mop brush compares like so. Let me show you. I'm going to do this rose in a purple so it doesn't all look like it's going to blend in. and I'll make it quick so you don't see the same process over and over again. So Squirrel Mop brush, I'm going to use the same routine, using the center to kind of, the tip, holding it straight up to create the center of the rose. And then I'm going to go dip this in water and do my larger C strokes or comma strokes. So this brush too retains quite a bit of water, not quite like the mop. So it has that. So I'd say Neptune, this would be my number one, which is the Squirrel Mop brush for florals. My second would be the number 8 in the Silver Black Velvet. And then my third would be the Princeton Neptune. I think this is like my favorite because while it gives me decent results, if you know how to maneuver and get the effects that you want, and that comes from practicing or using these brushes often enough to kind of get a feel for it, this just comes in handy for so many other things as well. So it's like a one-stop shop for everything, so to speak. And for me, less is more. So that's my preference. I hope I answered your question, Margaret. I'm just going to quickly read the comments. Jerry's asking, or Susie's asking, what kind of paints do I like the best? Susie, I really like my Old Faithful, which is the St. Petersburg White Knights. It's the one that I purchased, I think like 3 years ago now. So they're still going strong, and they're a great investment because they give you a really good feel for, they're great colors. Like that's all I can say about them. And then this year is the year I decided to take the plunge and get some Daniel Smith, and those are right here. I just got like the mini pack, which gives you a taste for like, I think 6 of their basic colors. And I really love them. They are quite pricey, which is why I don't normally kind of put them out there when I talk about tutorials or when I list, but I do have them on my list of suggested materials in my, if you check the comments, if you check the description, or even on my website, like I have them listed there because they are amazing. So if you have the budget, you are serious about this, I would definitely recommend getting the Daniel Smith for your more special projects. And then you can have the St. Petersburg White Knights for regular stuff, although they are still a cut above. So you could also use them for special projects or commissions, that sort of thing. All right, I hope I answered your question, Susie. You're welcome, Margaret. Glad you found this helpful. Beverly, you're so welcome. Again, glad you guys are actually following and finding this helpful. Let's see. So I did anyone have any other questions while I'm still trying to figure out what some of the other things people had asked? Please feel free to write your question in the chat section. I am going to get myself ready to show you the other shape that I also do a lot while painting florals. So I showed you the C shape or the comma strokes. Now I'm going to show you the leaves. Although I've done quite a few tutorials on leaves and florals in general, here's a proper breakdown and explanation for like just really focusing on getting those down packed. And once again, I will use the number 8 and I will use the Squirrel Mop brush to show you the difference that you can achieve. And I'll use the number 4 as well in the Silver Black Velvet, so you can see exactly the thinness and the shapes that you can get from these. All right, so let's start off with the let's start off with the number 8, Princeton Neptune. And I will get one of my nicer greens because for some reason that's not my favorite. So let's just do the mixing of the greens here so I can again give you a taste of how that is done, because if that is something that a lot of you are struggling with, I would like to address it. So I'm just going to use a brown that I like to mix with the light green to get like a nicer, more mature green, so to speak. And by mature, I mean like almost like an olivey green. That's my favorite. So I'm just mixing that color. So you see how I mix some of the brown with the bright green and it's dulled it down a lot, but it still has a nice warm feel to it. So I have my color on here. I don't want to get any more water because it's already pretty transparent. But my favorite leaves or go-to leaves are, if I didn't have to think at all, is just literally just going out from the side of the rose and then so making a stroke on the side and then just holding it down and pressing it out. That's it, just like one stroke. And if you wanted to do leaves that were slightly on the thicker side or the broader side, you can just do another stroke, and then you're doing it the same technique twice. And always drag the color down to the tip. So it is darker at the bottom and then lighter at the top. And that's it. And then I just kind of let it trail and leave it very open-ended that way. And sometimes if I want to get a different variation of leaves in a cluster, just to kind of make sure that there's nice depth, because that's how you can create the illusion of what's forward, what's backward, what's to the back and what's forward. This is a better description. I'll just get the color directly from the pan, the color pot, and then I'll just create it directly. So just creating it directly from there. And I don't quite like how that trail goes where majority of the color is kind of stuck at the top. So I'm just going to dip the brush in my water, come back, and this time I'm starting from the top and I'm bringing it down. Obviously I was a little bit off there, but that's how you can kind of fix your color in which direction it's kind of gone. Another good thing about watercolor, I find, like once you lay it on there, you can move it around with the water, so you have some bit of control, and that's always helpful. So that's kind of nice. So you can see how now the lighter greens look like they're in the background, the darker browns look like they're more in the forefront. And if you wanted to emphasize that and make that a little bit more visible, I guess, to the eye, because they're still kind of blending in a bit, just go in without dipping your brush in the water and you're getting this very dark brown, and you just go over what you've painted and then just lay on one more thing of color in the same motion that I've been showing you, and then the same thing here, and there we go. So you have that illusion that you're kind of showing, but at the same time it's like simple strokes, that's all you have to do. I'm just going to do them off to the side here so you can see the motions that I kind of, or how I hold my brush as I'm creating these leaves. Is one more time. So again, mixing the color onto the palette, and I'm just going to give it a direction. So I'm giving it this direction here, and I'm holding the tip down. From the tip, I'm starting on the stem, holding it down and dragging it out. So you can even make it like a flowy leaf depending on how you drag your paintbrush off. And then I'm holding it down at the tip here and bringing it back in. And there you have that nice thicker leaf. So you can practice doing these motions up and down to get that nice leafy look. So right now I'm going to start from the top going to the bottom. So right like that. And this could also be a leaf by itself, right? Like one of the thinner leaves. Or I could just add another stroke and make it one of the thicker ones. So you have a lot of flexibility by using just a simple brush to kind of hold down, drag, and kind of trail off, depending on the effect that you want. This is how it looks when you do it with the Squirrel Mop brush. Again, remember it holds a lot of water, so you want to make sure that you're well versed with how tricky the Squirrel Mop brush can be. So I'm getting and making sure it's mixed well enough. And I have enough water on here and color. So let's do it on the side. So I don't care too much for using this brush for leaves just because I find the spread of color is so much and I don't want it overpowering my florals. But just to kind of show you the difference, I'm doing this. So again, I'm creating the stem and then using the tip, holding down and kind of trailing off. And so you notice how the shape is a little more organic than the others. You have a little more room to kind of play around with the shape. And there we go. So it gives you quite a bit of reach, making it quite a big leaf. So that's where having the number 4 comes in handy if you want to have a nice variation of sizing in leaves side by side. So you just take the number 4 and kind of do the same motion, holding it down, trailing off. Same thing again, and trailing off. And then you can move the color down. And then what I always like to do is dipping the brush in water to get a little lighter green, and then just doing the same motion against another leaf that I've freshly done to kind of get a lighter effect, but also get the colors to flow in between. And this is especially nice if you're using the same color and just watering it down on the brush, or B, you're using a slightly different variation of green, because then you get the two colors kind of blending in, and that's really pretty. So that was that. I think I answered the leaf question, so you can kind of just work on the whole. Again, it's all about trailing and pressing down on the brush and really getting used to the amount of I guess the water and color it kind of lays down, so you can control your leaf sizing and also direction, because if your brush isn't quite as organic or loose like the Squirrel Mop brush, it's kind of a little more rigid when you try to make it a more flowy leaf. Like this was the Neptune 8, and I just find them to be a lot more rigid. This was the Squirrel Mop brush. It's just nicer with the flow because that's how the brush is made. So that's my 2 cents on that. And let me just quickly check the comments. Yeah, Susie, you should definitely give Daniel Smith's a try. A little goes a long way with them, like, trust me. And it's very pretty. Yeah, that's all I can say about that. I came in late, so I'm not sure if you're covered. Okay, Jay Bingham. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is, but you're asking me if how not to get the blotches when working with Canson Excel. Would love to know more how to avoid them. Can you elaborate and let me know exactly what you mean by blotches? Because I'm not quite following. I'm not quite following your question. I think I understand, but I'm not quite sure. Puddles of paint. Okay. So do you mean like how it does this? Like this kind of blotchy effect? Let me know. Otherwise I can try and show you what I think you mean, and then we can go from there. Beverly, what size is this Squirrel Mop brush? This is a number 1. And it is listed in my list of products that I use as well, so you can check it out there if you want to. Okay, right, and also the tip of leaves. Okay, so do you mean that the tip of my leaves have the blotchy effect? Or is that something that you struggle with? Checking. Maggie, glad you found this helpful. I figured I could just show you guys exactly what can be achieved with what, and then you can kind of go off, experiment by yourself, and then figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then kind of flow with that. Okay, so I think Jay, what you're referring to is the it sounds like the ratio or the water to color ratio is what's giving you an issue right here. What brush do you normally use when you're painting? Do you use the regular round brushes, or do you use something thick like the Squirrel Mop brushes that hold a lot of water? Because that really makes a huge difference in your painting, especially if you haven't kind of mastered or you're not comfortable with the amount of stuff it holds. There's another one. I use both the Heritage 8 and Princeton Silver. Okay, so I'm just going to use the Princeton number 8 to kind of show you how I mix the color. I've kind of showed this in the beginning, but honestly guys, you can never see enough of mixing colors to get a different variation or look and effect. So I'm just going to do that again. And then Jay, you can let me know in comments if you feel like I got you or I didn't get you. Just let me know. Okay, so I'm going to mix the color again. Here's my little pot of water. I just dip in it once and I brush off some of the water off it. I'm going to get some of the blue because I have a lot of pink on here. So I'm just dipping straight to get some blue, and I'm going to mix it onto my palette. And you might want this consistency, or you might want a little bit more. I normally like to get more because I feel like this is too little for my sheet of paper. So in that case, I feel like my brush is already a little bit too dry and I want more water. So I'm just going to dip it back in, get some water on here, then go back into my color paint, wiggle my brush around a good amount of times, and then come back on here. And I see it's like this nice bright color, and I could sort of work with this. So again, I'm just going to dip it back in my water, come back on here, mix it, and this gives me a little bit more. So I kind of like this consistency, and now this way I can just take what I have here and I can create a basic shaped flower. So let's just do that. So holding it down, I'm just going to create kind of like the leaf shapes that I've been showing you guys. And Jay, you can let me know if this is something that what you're referring to or not. So holding it from using the tip to kind of start off and then holding it down and then trailing off. And now you see how there's more color in the center and there's some at the tip. You have full freedom to kind of move that color down. And that's totally fine. Like, this is the beauty of watercolor. You are in control to a certain extent. Now I feel like there's a lot of water here. So what I'm going to do is take my number 4, and this is my remedy for creating the next petal. So I only have water on this, and I am going to create another shape. Okay, so this is clearly a little bit too thin. Let's do the slightly bigger. It didn't give me that much of reach, but you can see some of the color seeping in. It was too thin a brush, so I'm going to use the number 8. And you do require a little bit of the blue on here, so I'm just going to use the tip, touching the center, and kind of drag. And then it gives you another petal, and you can kind of move the water around. But again, now I can see that this had a lot of water on it that I didn't wipe off sooner. When this dries, it's going to give me that kind of weird blotchy look. Is this what you're referring to? Because if this is it, my remedy for that is, as soon as I see this, I just take my paper napkin, and then I kind of dab. Ever so lightly. And that fixes it. And okay, so this is it, right? Okay, so it really depends on, you just have to be a little more mindful about the amount of water you have on your brush when you're actually putting the color down. So again, I'm not getting any more water because I know this is a good amount of water. I'm just gonna go back in here and lay it down. And then you see how it collects in the middle. Like I mentioned, you have full freedom. You can kind of bring it back down. And if you feel it's too hard-edged, remember, it always dries differently. So never go by how it looks before it dries up. It always changes. So all I did for this next petal is I dipped it back into my water, and I'm creating another one. And if you don't want this lag of color in the center, I would just start from the top and go down. And that kind of fixes that issue. So watch me again. I dipped some water and I got some color. So I know I have quite a bit of water on my brush right now. So I'm going to create another petal, but this time from the outside in. So starting with the tip, dragging down and trailing off. Same thing again. And it gives you the same kind of color in between. That's okay. You can go over it and bring the color down to the center, and that changes how everything looks and feels. So when you have that much freedom with the watercolor, it's mainly because your water is too much. See, all I did was kind of add one more stroke, and it kind of brought all that water in. That right there tells me I have too much water. So all I do is go back in with the paper towel and get some off. There we go. So I hope I answered your question, Jay. Really, there's no easy fix for it. It's all about making sure that you have the right amount of water on your brush and knowing when after you've laid it down, if it's too much and it's blotchy and it does that little pool of color in one area of your painting, then you just bring in your paper towel and kind of touch on it very lightly, and that comes off. Let's see what other questions we have. Awesome, great. Okay, I'm glad this was helpful for all of you guys. it's been an hour, and I think I've kind of addressed everything that I said I was going to at the beginning of this session. So thanks so much for joining me, guys. If you have more questions, please feel free to send me a message or just comment below. I really appreciate this time together and the amount of interest you guys have in watercolor. I find it so therapeutic and so calming that I love sharing this joy with everyone else. If you don't follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please do. This way it's easier to interact, and I love, love, love seeing your creations. I love sharing them as well on my stories. So please feel free to do that. Of course, that's if you are comfortable sharing. So again, hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday. It's a long weekend for us here in Canada. So, I mean, mind you, it's been like one long weekend for like the past 6 weeks. But still, small joys because our weather is getting a lot warmer, and it's kind of getting me excited because, you know, less clothes is always great for me because I'm definitely a beach girl, if anything. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this session. Love, love, loved interacting with all of you. Thanks so much. And bye.